The wind worried at the hides of the tent like a living thing, clawing with icy fingers, snarling and moaning as it hunted for cracks. Jon Snow lay half wrapped in his cloak and half in his thoughts, listening to the storm and to the muffled sounds of the Wildling camp outside. A child's thin cry, a woman's sharp curse, the distant boom of Tormund's laughter rolling over the roar of the gale. Smoke coiled down from the fire hole, sharp as a reprimand in his nose. It reminded him of Winterfell, of the great hall, of torches guttering in the drafts, of Robb's face lit from below by fire and wine and war dreams. He shut his eyes, but the memory did not soften. Twisted, the hall around Robb shifted, the stone growing thinner, older, darker. Banners he knew, gray direwolf, flayed man, trout leaping from blue and red, bled and blurred until they were drowned under pale blue and silver, a pair of towers linked by a bridge. Music turned sour in his ears. Gray wind's growl rumbled up through the flagstones, and then the wolf was howling, a desperate, furious sound that filled his skull as men rose from benches with knives in their hands. Jon flinched awake. The fire in Tormund's tent had burned low, banked to coals that pulsed like sullen hearts. Ghost lay at his feet, pale as new-fallen snow save for those eyes, watching him with an animal patience that made Jon feel small and young and terribly alone. "I know," Jon whispered, though he could not have said what it was he knew, only that a weight hung over him heavier than the furs on his shoulders, heavier than the wall itself. "You mutter in your sleep, boy." Tormund's voice came from the shadows, roughened by age and drink and too much laughing. The big man sat with his back to a tent pole, bare arms bristling with red gold hair, a horn cupped in one hand. In this faint light, with the wind howling beyond the hide, he might have been some old god of the north, carved from beef and bellow. "Talking to your wolf? Or your gods?" "Both, maybe," Jon said. His throat was dry. "Bad dreams. Aye, hard to have sweet ones in this piss-freezing cold." Tormund took a swallow. "What is it you see? Snow and rocks? Dead men walking? Or that red witch of Stannis bearing her teats over a fire?" Jon thought of the towers and the sound of gray wind's howl cutting off like a sword stroke. "My brother," he said, "and a hall, a feast, blood." Tormund grunted and scratched at his beard with thick fingers. "Brothers are trouble. I had 5, only 2 left. One drank himself to death on goat's milk and arrogance." His eyes narrowed, studying Jon. "This your king brother? The one you're so torn up about?" Jon hesitated. The wind found a new seam and whistled shrill through the hides, as if urging him to silence. But the dream clung to his ribs like frost. "Robb," he said. "Robb Stark, king in the north." "King of a lot of burned fields," Tormund said. "And dead sons." There was no cruelty in it, only bluntness. "Dreams don't cook a man's supper. Best you sleep. Tomorrow we talk with Mance, and he thinks himself a king too. Won't do for you to be blinking like some owl." Jon lay back. The hide beneath his head was stiff and cold. He listened to the wind, and to Tormund's breathing, and to ghosts shifting in the dark. When sleep took him again, it came not as rest but as a plunge, as if he'd stepped off the top of the wall. This time the hall was clearer. The banners of House Frey. He recognized them now, 2 pale towers on blue, hung crooked from damp-stained beams. Men laughed and danced, and somewhere a bard plucked out a tune Jon had heard once in the south, a Lannister song, though the sound kept snagging and going sharp, as if the strings were wet with blood. Robb sat at the high table, crown gleaming, his face older than when Jon had seen him last, harder. Beside him sat a woman Jon did not know, with dark hair and a hand resting on the curve of her belly. Catelyn Stark was there too, worry written into every line of her face. Black shapes moved in the rafters. Gray wind rose suddenly, hackles a white storm, and the sound he made then was no mere howl. It was a warning that clawed at Jon's bones, a sound that wanted to drag him out of the dream entirely. Crossbow strings thrummed. The first arrow took Gray Wind in the neck. "Robb!" Jon shouted, and his own cry woke him, but the hall did not let him go. Clung in fragments. The crash of overturned benches, the shrieks of women, the wet, thick sound of steel biting into flesh. The last thing he remembered was Robb turning, crown slipping, something like surprise in his eyes rather than fear. Ghost's muzzle was on his chest. Jon realized his hands were in the direwolf's fur, knuckles white. The fire had sunk to dull red. Tormund snored, oblivious. Outside, the night keened. Jon stared into the dark until the first hint of gray bled along the tent's edge. The feeling did not pass. It only sharpened like a blade being drawn. By dawn, the storm had blown itself to tatters. Pale light seeped through the hides, thin as watered milk. Jon pushed aside the tent flap and stepped into the brittle morning, Ghost a pale shadow at his heels. The camp stretched around him in a rough circle of hide tents, half-frozen wagons, and crude lean-tos, all rimed with frost. Fires were kindling into smoky life. Men and women hunched over them like supplicants at cold altars. Children chased one another through the slush, shrieking. Farther off, a giant lumbered past, wrapped in what looked like the flayed hide of some enormous bear, its breath steaming in heavy white gusts. The sky above was low and flat, the color of dirty wool. It felt oppressive, pressing him down toward the muck, pinning him between earth and cloud. Jon breathed it in, the chill, the smell of wood smoke and unwashed bodies, and something else beneath it all, something sour and stale that might have been fear. His place was here, he reminded himself, in Mance Rayder's host, playing the turncloak. The wall stood behind him. His brothers would call him traitor if they saw him in these furs, with a wildling sword at his hip. He had chosen this path. There was no turning aside. So why would the gods show him Robb's death in a hall he had never seen? Heard you shouting in the night. Ygritte came up from behind, light on her feet despite the snow. Her red hair was a snarl about her shoulders, eyes bright in the chill. She wore a man's old mail shirt over leathers, a bow at her back, and looked entirely at home in this bitter world. You were calling a name, Robb. That your brother? Yes, Jon said. The king brother. She said it with a crooked twist of her mouth. You Southrons and your kings, always kneeling to some fool in a pretty hat. He wears a crown, not a hat, Jon said without thinking. She laughed. What's the difference? Both make your neck cold. Her gaze sharpened. You were afraid in that dream. I could hear it. What is it you saw? He hesitated. To speak a dream aloud was to give it shape, and he did not want this thing any more solid than it already was. Yet the memory of Grey Wind's howl still echoed in his chest. A hall, he said at last. My brother at feast. And treachery. Arrows in the rafters. Men cut down with daggers in their hands and wine on their lips. Ygritte snorted softly. Southrons. She said it almost pitying now. You lot put your faith in stone and songs and then act surprised when someone slips a blade between your ribs. Guest writes a pretty story. Stories don't stop steel. In the South, breaking guest right is an abomination, Jon said. The worst crime. Even the phrase. The phrase? She echoed. The name meant nothing to her. Lord Walder Frey. He holds the twins. 2 towers over the Green Fork with a bridge between. No one crosses the river without his leave. Well, that sounds like a man learns to weigh coin heavier than oaths, Ygritte said. A lord with a bridge is like a whore with only one bed. Everyone's got to pay to lie in it. Despite himself, Jon almost smiled. Then the unease rose again, thick in his throat. There's to be a wedding at the twins, he said. My brother slighted Lord Frey once, broke a marriage pact. He was to make amends. He thought of the woman beside Robb in his dream, hand on her belly. If the phrase mean to... He did not finish. If the phrase mean to spill his blood, he thought instead. If they mean to betray him under their own roof. You think that's what the dream was? Ygritte asked, squinting against the thin light. Some crow's omen from your gods? You still think they answer you, after you turned your cloak on them? I didn't turn my cloak on my gods, Jon said, more sharply than he'd meant. Or my family. I'm here for them. She studied him a moment, then shrugged, letting it go. Dreams are dreams. The free folk don't sit around waiting for ravens to tell us what to do. If a lord means you harm, you watch his hands, not your pillow. She nudged him with her shoulder. You worry like an old woman, Jon Snow. Come. Tormund's got some poor fool trussed up by his ankles. Says he came from the south. He'll want to hear your kneeler words for once. The word south snagged in Jon's chest like a hook. From where? He asked. From where else? Ygritte's grin flashed. From your side of the wall. Now stop scowling at the sky and come along. You look like you've swallowed a pine cone. He followed her through the camp, Ghost pacing at his side, the dream clinging to him with every step. Somewhere beyond this wild tangle of tents and fires and strange gods, Robb Stark rode with his banners. Somewhere he was making his slow way toward a pair of towers and a bridge, and a feast that might yet become a slaughter. The crowd around Tormund's frame was thick, a ring of rough faces and rougher voices, all jeers and speculation. Jon caught snatches as he and Ygritte pushed their way through. Said he come from the Trident, whatever piss puddle that is. Soft as marrow, look at those hands. Reckon his horse tasted better than he will. At the center of it all, a man swung gently, trussed by his ankles, his face purpled from blood and cold. His cloak was good riverland wool, now caked with half-frozen mud. Coins had been sewn into its hem, but someone with sharp fingers had already slit the seams and plucked them out. He was older than Jon by a dozen years, maybe more, the first threads of gray at his temples. He thrashed as Tormund prodded him, not cruelly, just as if testing a side of bacon. I told you, the man was gasping. I'm no bloody knight. I'm a traitor. I bring salt and wine and... Wine I tasted, Tormund said, grinning through his beard. Not bad for kneeler piss. Now, you say there's war south of the river? Kings and lions and wolves. Please, the man said, ignoring the question in his panic. I have children in Seagard. They'll starve if... One more mouth is as likely to starve them sooner as later. Tormund turned as Jon stepped into the ring. Snow, Ygritte says you speak the Lord's tongue better than I do. His smile broadened. Come explain to this goat that if he keeps braying about starving brats instead of telling me something interesting, I'll feed him to the giant. The giant in question stood a few yards off, idly chewing something that might have been an entire haunch of something else. His small dark eyes regarded the dangling man with incurious calm. Jon stepped closer, Ghost pacing with him, hackles faintly raised. You're far from Seagard, he said to the traitor. What had you riding the Kingsroad alone? Not alone, the man croaked. Blood had pooled in his face so long that it made his eyes bulge. There were others. Bandits took the rest. I ran. The gods cursed me for a coward, and now I'm to die here. The gods curse many men for less, Tormund said cheerfully. What's your name, kneeler? Derrik, he panted. Derrik Holt, Cooper's son. Please, you're Mance Raiders folk, aren't you? The king beyond the wall? I've heard the tales. If you're to come south, I can tell you where the lords gather, where to avoid. Now that's interesting. Tormund's eyes gleamed. See, Snow? Squeeze a man and something useful dribbles out eventually. He gestured with his horn. Ask him. You know these places he prattles on about. Jon studied the traitor. The man's desperation was a sharp, sour smell in the cold air. You said lords gather, he prompted. Where? Everywhere, Derrik said. It's all madness now. Robber hordes, red priests, sells words riding for whoever fills their purse. But the worst of it, he swallowed, hanging like a grotesque pendulum. The king in the north marches for the twins. Every fool knows that. The word struck like a mailed fist to Jon's chest. The king in the north, he repeated carefully. You mean Robb Stark? Derrick's eyes flicked to him. Aye, who else? Robb Stark, the young wolf, marching to make his peace with Lord Walder. They say the Freys are puffed up like toads, angry about some slight, but that's how lords are. They'll drink and sing and barter brides, and we small folk will pay the price one way or another." "Lord Walder Frey," Jon said. The name tasted like iron. "What have you heard of his anger?" "Only what every man with ears hears," Derrik said. "That Stark boy broke a marriage pact, took some foreign bride with a belly round as a harvest moon. The Freys hate him for it, but what can they do? He's their king's ally." He gave a strangled laugh that turned into a cough. "Mind you, if there's a man in the Trident who'd sell his own grandchildren for a better seat by the fire, it's Lord Walder. But he'd not dare spill blood under guest right. Not even he's that mad." The dream rose up again, unbidden. Gray winds blood on stone, Robb turning in astonishment, the Frey banners drooping as if already drenched in red. Jon's fingers dug into his own palms until he felt his nails bite. "Sometimes men do mad things," he said quietly, "if they think they've been wronged long enough." Tormund snorted. "Guessed right," he said, making a dismissive gesture. "We have no such pretty custom. Man gives you meat and fire, you don't spit in it, that's all. But a man that invites you into his hall and then slits your throat? That isn't a man. That's a coward with too many sons." "Lord Walder has many sons," Jon said. "Then he has many cowards," Tormund replied. Derrik's gaze flicked between them, sensing something in their voices. "I've told you what I know," he said hoarsely. "Please, if you're to kill me, do it clean. Don't let the giant." Tormund reached up and grabbed the man by the tunic, hauling him closer like a sack of onions. "We won't kill you today," he said, his mirth gone, voice suddenly low. "We might even set you down. But first you'll tell my crow-bastard friend every dirty bit of rumor that's stuck in your ears about this Lord Walder, about his twins, and about this wedding of wolves and Freys. You understand?" Derrik swallowed. He whispered. Tormund let him swing back and clap Jon on the shoulder hard enough to make him stagger. "There, you wanted to worry. Now you've something worth worrying about." His eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "Come see me when you're done, boy. Maybe these dreams of yours are worth a horn of mead after all." By the time Jon had wrung the last of Derrik Holt's tales from him, the man's voice was a ragged rasp, as frayed as his nerves. Much of it was tavern dust and gutter talk. This lord betting that one's wife, some hedge knight's boasts, mutterings of red priests in the south setting kings afire. But threaded through it all like a dark cord ran the same story. Robb Stark's slight to House Frey, Walder Frey's simmering resentment, and the great wedding that was to heal all wounds. "He's a miserly old goat, is Lord Walder," Derrik said at last, closing his eyes as if the effort of speech were too much. "Keeps bread from his own bastards, they say. Built his house on tolls and time, and can't bear to have either stolen from him. Your brother took his time and his promised bride both. That sort of sting doesn't fade." "Who attends this wedding?" Jon asked. "How many men?" "As many as the young wolf can spare, I'd reckon," Derrik said. "His lords, his sworn swords. He's lost the Karstarks, but he's still got Blackfish Tully and them from the neck, and..." He waved a hand weakly. "What's it matter? I'm a cooper's son, not a maester. I know what I hear, that the twins will be thick with steel and song when he comes." Song. Jon heard once more the Lannister tune, the notes gone sour. "And the Freys?" he pressed. "Have they called in allies?" "Who'd answer?" Derrik sneered faintly. "Folk respect Lord Walder's bridge, not his person. Nah. He'll smile his thin smile and mutter and take his insults like he always has. He's survived every king from Aegon on. He won't risk his house on some fit of temper now. But sometimes men do mad things." Jon thought again, hearing Ygritte scoff at Kneeler customs, tasting the ash of his dream on his tongue. A lifetime of swallowing slights might turn a man's temper into poison. He stepped back. Derrik hung limp, breathing shallowly. "You've done what was asked," Jon said. "Tormund will decide what to do with you." "South," Derrik whispered. "Let me go south. I won't speak of you. On my father's grave, I swear it." Jon did not answer. Promises were easy in the shadow of death. He gestured to two wildlings who had watched with bored curiosity. "Cut him down," he said, slowly. "If he runs, you can decide whether he's more use as a warning post." They grinned at that and moved to the ropes. Jon walked away, Ghost padding beside him. The direwolf's fur brushed his hand, rough and real and present. He focused on that sensation, on the crunch of frozen slush under his boots, the rasp of his own breath, anything to anchor him in now. But when he closed his eyes, the future rose up. A hall of stone, a rain of arrows, Robb Stark's blood seeping into an irredeemable floor. He found Tormund where he had known he would, by the largest fire in the camp. The Wildling chief sat on a log, gnawing on a joint of meat the size of a small child's leg. The air around him was thick with grease smoke and laughing voices, men and women both jeering at some half-drunken story. When Jon approached, those nearest made room, curiosity gleaming in their eyes. "Well," Tormund called, "did our upside-down friend tell you that the south is paved with gold and women who beg to be carried north?" "He told me enough," Jon said, and the words came tight. "Robb is going to the twins, to Lord Frey, with a good part of his strength." Tormund tore off a strip of meat and chewed it slowly, watching Jon. "And you think this Lord Walder means to gut him like a boar instead of kissing his hairy kneeler arse?" "Yes," Jon said. The word felt like a blade drawn. "I do." The laughter around the fire faltered. Tormund wiped grease from his beard with the back of his hand, smearing it rather than cleaning it, and regarded Jon with an intent that cut deeper than any jape. For a long moment he said nothing, letting the silence stretch taut as a bowstring. The only sounds were the crackle of fat in the flames and the distant thud of a giant's tread. "You're certain?" he said at last. Jon thought of saying it was only a dream. It was a traitor's talk. It was fear. But what emerged was simple. "I am." Tormund's eyes narrowed. "Because some blue-eyed wolf howled in your sleep? Because of the man's tales? Because I know what my brother did to insult Lord Frey, and what kind of man Walder Frey is said to be? Because it feels wrong, all of it. And yes," he met Tormund's gaze without flinching, "because of the dream. I've had wolf dreams before. They weren't all weather and rabbits." There was a soft, derisive sound from somewhere in the ring. One of the thens, bald and scarred, clicked his tongue. "Crow dreams of his king brother dying in some stone hall, so now he wants us all to piss our furs." Another wildling, an older woman whose hair had gone iron gray in two thick braids, spat into the fire. "Kneeler business. Let them slaughter each other in their stone boxes. Gives the crows less to send north. Peace." Tormund's voice cut through the mutters. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands dangling. "Tell me plain, Snow. What is it you want?" Jon had asked himself that 100 times since slipping over the wall, and never had the answer been less simple. "I want to be true," he thought, "to my vows, to my blood, to myself." As if those three were not pulling him in 3 directions. "I want Robb to live," he said. "He's my brother. He's the king in the north. If he dies at the twins in some treacherous ambush, the north will fracture. The Lannisters will grow stronger. It will be harder for any man to look north and see the true danger." "The others," Tormund said. "Yes. And you think if your brother keeps his head on his shoulders and his crown on his pretty curls, he'll come running to our aid when we knock on his southern door?" "I think," Jon said slowly, "that he's an honorable man trying to keep faith with too many people at once, like my father was in his way. If we come to him openly, as allies with proof of what walks beyond the wall, yes. I believe he would listen." Tormund snorted. "Honorable." He made the word sound like both compliment and curse. "Honorable men get their own folk killed as often as they save them. Still." He broke the bone in his hand with a sharp crack. "It's better than dealing with those gold-shitting Lannisters your traitor spoke of." The then scoffed. "You'd break with Mance's plan for this? For some kneeler king who'd as soon call us savages and send us to their steel cages?" "I didn't say I'd do anything yet," Tormund said, not taking his eyes off Jon. "I'm listening." Jon felt the weight of that gaze like a hand on his shoulder again. Mance knows the wall, he said. He knows its strengths, its weaknesses, but he doesn't know what waits south of it. The lords, their grudges, their pride. He means to smash through with sheer numbers. It might work, or it might break us all on black stone and ice. But if the North had reason to open its gates instead. You'd have us beg? The then said. Go south like dog thieves asking for scraps? No, Jon's voice sharpened. You'd go south as allies in a war the southern lords don't yet know they're fighting. You hate the wall, so do many in the north. What if you had lands beyond it? Wood to cut, fields to till. No more cowering in caves while dead things walk. The gray-braided woman barked a laugh, but there was less scorn in it now. And what would we give in return? Our songs? Our daughters? Or our spears when your king snaps his fingers? Our spears when the others come, Jon said. When the dead rise in such numbers that no castle's walls are high enough, no river wide enough. I've seen Wights. I fought them. You know this is true as well as I. A murmur went through the ring at that, uneasy and low. Fear of the dead was a language all of them shared. Tormund sucked marrow from the cracked bone, then flung it into the flames. You speak of big things for such a skinny crow, he said. Kingdoms and wars and making peace between folk who've been stealing each other's sheep since before my grandmam was a maid. He wiped his hand on his tunic and stood, looming over Jon. And all of it hangs on stopping this one feast from turning to a slaughter. Yes, Jon said simply. Then we'd need to reach your brother before he rides into this phrase trap, Tormund said. We'd need to move fast and quiet. And we'd need something to offer him besides news and a pretty speech. There's no lord south of the wall who trusts a wildling's word, however fine you dress it. Jon measured his next breath, felt the shape of what he was about to say. It would change everything if Tormund agreed. It might damn him in more ways than he could count. You have something to offer, he said. Your people, your spears, your giants, an army that knows how to fight on hard ground, how to survive winter. Mance means to use them as a battering ram against the wall. I'm asking you to consider using them as a banner instead. A banner. Tormund's teeth showed in a grin, but his eyes were thoughtful. Under whose sigil? Under your own, Jon said, and under the direwolf of House Stark. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the space between them. The rough-woven cloth of Tormund's tunic, the old battle scars puckering his forearms, the wild brightness in his eyes. Jon's own breath frosting the air, the steady presence of Ghost at his side. Somewhere beyond, a woman laughed, a child cried, a pot boiled over. But here, now, everything hung on the answer of one big, boisterous man from the true north. A banner with a wolf on it, Tormund mused. I once killed a big gray bastard out on the ice lakes. Took 4 of us and half a morning, and it still almost took my arm. You Starks breed them in your halls the way we breed fleas in our blankets, by the sound of it. Gray Wind, Jon said. Robb's direwolf. He fights at my brother's side. Or did. In his mind's eye, he saw the beast crumple under an arrow's bite. He pushed the image away. My father used to say a man's word should be as strong as any sword. Robb believed that. If we come to him with truth and with men, I think he'll hold by it. And if he doesn't? The then asked. If he takes one look at us and sees only raiders and thieves? If he cuts our throats and calls it justice for every hut we've burned? Jon had no easy answer. Then you'll have to decide whether you trust me enough to take that risk, he said, or whether you'd sooner ride with Mance and die on the ice. Tormund's laughter burst out then, sudden and booming. 7 bleeding hells, Crow. You've bigger stones than half the men who ever called themselves kings. He slapped Jon on the shoulder again. You ask me to turn my back on a man I've followed for 10 years, to march into the jaws of the Kneeler world with nothing but your word as shield. I'm asking you to help me save my brother, Jon said, and his voice shook despite himself. And your people, all your people. Not just those behind Mance's banners, but the old ones who can't walk as fast as he marches now. The children who'll freeze when the others come. Mance means to get them south, but he treats the south as a prize to be seized. It's not. It's a line in the snow that has to be held. The gray-braided woman raised her chin. You speak like your old boy. How many years have you got? 16? 17? You talk of lines in the snow as if you drew them yourself. I didn't, Jon said. But I've stood on top of the wall and seen what's coming. I've seen dead men walk. I watched one try to kill the Lord Commander while we slept. If we don't stand together, south and north both, the dead will sweep us all away, and it won't matter whose banner flew higher. The murmurs that followed were different this time. Less mocking, more uneasy. The tales of white shadows were old ones, older than any crown. You could mock a boy's dreams, or a traitor's gossip. You could not mock the chill that slid down your spine when someone spoke of corpses that refused to lie down. Tormund stared into the fire for a long moment, his broad face carved into crags by the glow. When he spoke again, it was almost to himself. Mance is a good man, not always a wise one, but good. He wants what I want, for our folk to live. He chose one road. He lifted his gaze back to Jon. You ask me to take another. I ask you to help me cut across, Jon said. If Mance breaks himself on the wall, you can still try to make peace after, but you'll be doing it with fewer men and less hope. If Robb Stark dies at the Twins, the North will be leaderless and bitter. The Lannisters won't see any difference between you and the dead. They'll kill whatever crawls out of the snow. You expect me to weep for kneeler kings? Tormund asked, but there was little heat in it. No, Jon's hand tightened in Ghost's fur. I expect you to see an opening. The chance to save more lives than any raid ever has. Mance chose you as one of his captains for a reason. You can think beyond the next goat you steal. Tormund's mouth twitched. For an instant Jon thought he might be struck. Instead, the big man gave a grunt that might have been reluctant admiration. You speak sharp for a crow, he said. He looked around at the watching faces. Well, what say you, you pack of flea-bitten sheep thieves? Shall we hear him out? Or shall I toss him on the fire and save Mance the trouble? The gray-braided woman snorted. I've no love for crows, but I've seen dead men walk, same as him. If there's a chance this king of his will give us land and not chains, I'd hear it. The then's lips thinned. Mance won't thank us for slinking off like cowards. You think Mance so small he can't afford to lose one hairy arse and a few dozen fools? Tormund shot back. If this goes to piss, he'll barely notice we were gone. If it works, he shrugged, shoulders rolling. If it works, maybe we stride into the south with more friends than enemies. He looked back to Jon, decision hardening. We can't all go. That would be too big a hole in Mance's host, and too big a feast for the crows if we fail. But a band, a few hundred spears, a giant or two to make your kneeler lords shit their hose. That's a thing could be done. Hope flared in Jon's chest so sharply it almost hurt. You'll do it? He asked. I said it could be done, Tormund corrected. I didn't say it would be. His eyes gleamed. First you'll tell me everything about this brother of yours. What kind of man he is, what he fears, what he loves. If I'm to bet my people's lives on him, I'd know whether he's more like you, or more like the bastards who built that bloody wall. They sat late into the day, long after the gray light had burned away to a wan afternoon and then begun to sink again, as it did so quickly in these bitter months. Tormund drank and tore at what remained of the haunch, though he seemed to forget both midway through most mouthfuls, his attention caught by Jon's words. Others drifted away as boredom or chores claimed them, leaving only a core of a dozen listeners. The gray-braided woman, the scowling then, a lanky youth with wind-burned cheeks, a pair of lovers sharing a single cloak, and a giant who had settled down nearby with his back to a boulder, eyes half-lidded, perhaps listening, perhaps dozing. Jon spoke of Winterfell, of stone so old it seemed to hum with memory, of hot springs coiling beneath the floors, of weirwoods and wolves and games in the godswood. He spoke of Robb as he had been, laughing in the snow, sword in hand, the older brother who always looked back to see if Jon was keeping up, and as he had become, his shoulders bowed by a weight too heavy for any boy to bear. "He's made mistakes," Jon said. The admission tasted like ash. "He went south for father and lost much of the north in doing it. He broke faith with Lord Frey. He killed Lord Karstark when maybe he could have found some other way. He marries for love when he should have married for war. That last one I can't fault him for," Tormund said with a grin. "I did the same once. Woke up next to a woman who nearly bit my nose off and knew I'd marry her or she'd kill me." His grin faded. "But go on." "He's proud," Jon said, "like my father was. He believes in honor, in oaths, in doing what's right even when it costs him. If we prove to him that what's right now is making peace with the free folk so we can fight the dead together, I think he'd choose it, even if his lords grumble. And if his pride's been wounded so deep by this Frey slight that he can't bear to reach out his hand?" the gray-braided woman asked. "You Southrons and your faces, always worrying how they look." Jon thought of Robb's face in the dream, the surprise as the arrow flew. "Then I'll remind him that a king who clings to his pride when his people are threatened is no better than the lords he fights," he said. "He won't want to hear it, but he needs to. If any man can listen to hard truths and still do what's needed, it's him." "You love him," the lanky youth observed. There was no accusation in it, only curiosity. "Yes," Jon said simply. "He's my brother, not by blood," the then said. "You said as much, bastard crow." "Blood isn't the only thing that makes a man your brother," Jon replied. "Sharing a roof, sharing a father, sharing the same winters. I'd die for him, that's enough." Tormund grunted approval at that. "Man who won't bleed for his own isn't worth the trouble of birthing," he said. He leaned back, the log creaking under his weight. "All right, Snow, you've painted me a picture of this young wolf. I can't say I like the frame, but the colors aren't all bad." Outside the circle of firelight, the sky had deepened to a bruised purple. The first stars pricked through, cold and distant. The wind had dropped to a low, constant murmur, as if eavesdropping. Tormund's next words dropped into that hush like stones. "I'll do it," he said. The world seemed to tilt. "You'll?" "I'll take a band south with you," Tormund repeated. "We'll find this brother of yours. We'll put your warning in his ears, and we'll see if his honor's as sharp as you say. If he keeps his word and offers lands and safety for our folk, we'll fight beside him when the dead come. If he lies..." His grin flashed again, suddenly terrible. "Then he'll find that wildlings are worse than Freys when it comes to breaking a feast." Relief and terror washed together in Jon's chest, leaving him unsteady. He felt as if he'd just loosed an arrow at too distant a target and heard it strike something anyway. "Thank you," he said. Felt inadequate. "Don't thank me yet, boy," Tormund said. "We haven't told Mance, and we haven't decided who goes, or how we slip away without half the host trailing our arses." "Mance won't approve," the then said flatly. "Mance can bugger himself," Tormund said with rough affection. "He'll curse my name when he hears, then he'll curse yours more. But he knows I do as I please. That's why he keeps me close. I'll tell him I'm taking some folk to sniff out places south of the wall where our people can hide. It's not even a lie, just not the whole of it." The gray-braided woman nodded slowly. "I'll come," she said. "If there's to be talking, I'd see the faces we're talking to." "You'll complain the whole time," Tormund told her. She said. "That way you'll know I'm still alive." The then hesitated, jaw working. "I'll not go crawling to Kneelers for scraps," he said. "But if there's to be war with the dead, I won't sit in a tent and wait to hear how it went. Neither. I'll go. To see." "You see," Tormund said to Jon, satisfaction roughening his voice. "A handful of fools already. We'll find more. The rest is planning. We'll need to leave soon, if your brother's not to be dead before we reach him." The words struck like a bell in Jon's skull, setting all his doubts ringing. "Soon." He looked up at the cold, indifferent stars and thought of the twins, of torchlight glinting off crossbows hidden in rafters, of gray wind's strangled howl. For the first time since the dream, hope cut through the dread. Not to banish it, but to stand beside it, teeth bared. They spoke of roads and rivers then, of passes and patrols and the places where the wall was weakest. Jon scratched lines in the snow with a stick, the crude map more memory than accuracy. The long white slab of the wall itself, the gift's sparse villages, the Kingsroad running south like a spine. Tormund listened intently, his brows knit, as if he were trying to memorize a story rather than a landscape. "We can't go near Castle Black," Jon said. Saying the name felt like plucking a harp string in his chest. "The brothers will be on edge already. They know Mance is coming. If they see wildlings riding in company with a man they think has turned his cloak..." He trailed off. He knew too well what they would do. "Then we don't go near," Tormund said. "You said there's an old gate, half frozen, east of there? Long sealed, but the ice shifts. There are cracks, gaps. I saw them once on patrol. It will be hard going, but a small band could find a way through, if we're careful." "We'll be careful," Tormund said. "As careful as men can be when they're doing something this bloody foolish." They traced their path further, through the tumbled stones of old forts that had once guarded the gift, past half-abandoned farmsteads, where smoke still rose from a few chimneys, across the fords of the White Knife or the Green Fork, depending on where they found Stark scouts. Jon's sense of distances had become stretched by time at the wall. What had once seemed near from the Raven Tower now felt vast on foot. But with good horses, if they could steal, buy, or barter them, and hard riding, it might be done. Mance will want to know where we go," the then muttered. "He's no fool." "He's not," Tormund agreed. "That's why we give him enough truth to chew on so he doesn't bite deeper. I'll tell him we mean to feel for weak places in the South Side. Places our folk can slip through when the war starts. He'll grumble, but he'll let us go. He knows I've done worse with less reason." The gray-braided woman nodded. "Is it a weak place?" she asked. "Or a strong one, this king in the north?" Jon thought of Robb riding out of Winterfell in armor too big for him, face taut with the effort of looking brave. He thought of him standing in a war tent, crown heavy on his curls, his voice low but firm as he spoke of battles and banners. "Both," he said, "strong enough to hold to what he thinks is right, weak enough to bleed when men betray him. Then we'd best give him as little chance for betrayal as possible," she said. "If we walk into his camp looking like raiders, we'll be arrows before we're words." "That I can help with," Tormund said, his grin returning. "We still have some bits of armor we took off crows and kneelers. Helmets, cloaks. It'll make us look as foolish as they do, but if it keeps us from getting shot full of holes, I'll suffer it." Jon's throat tightened unexpectedly at the mention of stolen Night's Watch gear, but he bit down on the feeling. There was no path forward that did not run over something he loved. When at last they rose, the fire was little more than embers, and the camp was quiet save for the occasional shout or laugh from other rings. Jon stood, feeling the stiffness in his legs, the weariness pulling at his bones. He had not eaten since morning, but he could not have said whether he was hungry or not. His thoughts felt like a river in flood, carrying him heedless. Ygritte came to him as the others drifted off, catching his sleeve. Her face was half shadow, half starlight. "So," she said, "you and Tormund mean to go south to your king brother. You didn't think to ask if I'd be coming?" "I assumed you would," Jon said. "Or that you'd kill me before I left if I didn't ask." She made a pleased sound at that, low in her throat. "You know nothing, Jon Snow," she said, but there was no sting in it. "Course I'm coming. Someone has to make sure you don't start kneeling the moment you see stone walls again." "It won't be like that," Jon said, though he could not quite believe it himself. "No?" She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the smoke in her hair, the leather, the faint, wild scent that was simply her. "You left your crows for me," she said. "Then you left me for them. Now you want to leave them for your brother. Your heart's as tangled as a dead man's beard." "I left the watch for the watch," Jon said. "To save it, to be useful. I left you to." "Don't," she said. Her hand tightened on his sleeve, just for a moment, then let go. We'll say the rest another day. Maybe on the Kingsroad. Maybe never. Her mouth twisted. I don't like this, Jon Snow. Running off to warn kneelers who'd cut my throat for sport if they saw me. But I've seen dead things move that should not, and I've seen you stand against them. If there's a chance this king of yours will see sense, I'll stand with you a while longer. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me either, she said, echoing Tormund. You just make sure this Robb Stark of yours is worth it. When she had gone, Jon stood a while longer, staring at the wall's distant loom across the winter-dark land. It rose black against the stars, a jagged line drawn by men who feared what lay beyond. He wondered if it looked different from the south. He wondered if he would ever stand atop it again and feel the wind scour his doubts away. Ghost pressed against his leg. Jon rested a hand on the direwolf's head, fingers sinking into thick fur. Soon, he said softly, to Robb, to the Freys, to the fate that had been waiting at the twins. Soon. Mance Rayder's tent was larger than Tormund's, but not grand in the way southern lords would have made it. There were no banners, no carved chairs, no gilded anything. Just good black wool, well sewn, and a circle of stones to hold the worst of the wind. Inside, a simple table had been set up over a pair of turned crates, strewn with maps, bits of slate, and a scatter of carved wooden pieces. Tiny towers, tiny shields, tiny trees. A big kettle bubbled over a brazier in one corner, filling the space with the smells of onions and some tough meat that might have been goat. Mance himself looked up as they entered. He wore no crown today, only a plain leather cap to tame his dark hair. Around him were his closest captains. Steer of the Thens, the Lord of Bones with his grisly adornments, Harmadogshead, Rattleshirt, a few others Jon did not know by name. Eyes turned to them in a ripple measuring. Tormund, Mance said. Come to argue about my march again? I told you we can't wait for every straggler with a limp. Winter's on our heels. Tormund scratched at his beard. I've never argued about marching, he said. Walking's what I do best. But I've been talking with our crow, and he's convinced me there's use yet in sending scouts further south. Not just over the wall, but beyond. To see what the kneelers are up to while we sneak under their noses. Mance's gaze shifted to Jon. You've ideas on that, do you, Snow? Jon felt the weight of all those eyes. It reminded him, absurdly, of standing before Maester Luwin and reciting his lessons. Only here, a wrong word might mean more than a rap on the knuckles. You'll need places beyond the wall where your people can hide, he said. Villages that are half empty from the war. Forests where the lords rarely send their men. If we find them now, your host won't have to move blindly once you cross. You asked me to be useful. I can be if I help Tormund find those places. And how far would you go? Mance asked. To Winterfell's doorstep? To wherever we can without drawing too much attention, Jon said carefully. But there's more. The south is burning. I heard it on the wall, and we heard it again from the traitor Tormund's men caught. The Lannisters fight the Starks fight the Greyjoys, everyone fights everyone. That can be good for us if it keeps their eyes off the wall. Can be bad if it puts more steel in our path. If you know where their kings are, you know where their swords aren't. Mance nodded slowly. And you know where their kings are, he said. I know where one is meant to be soon, Jon said. Robb Stark marches for the twins. For House Frey. The name made a few of the captains glance at one another. Mance's face did not change. And what's that to us? Everything, Jon said before he could stop himself. Mance's brows rose a hair, and Jon forced himself to temper his tone. The North is strong, if it holds together. If Robb Stark dies at the twins in some treacherous ambush, the North will be weaker. The Lannisters will be freer to send men north when you come over the wall. If he lives, he's a thorn in their side, and he may even be an ally against the true enemy. The true enemy, Mance echoed. The dead ones you and Tormund yammer about. Yes, Jon said. Harmadogshead spat onto the floor. I say let the Kneeler lords kill each other. Less work for us when we come south. Perhaps, Mance said. His voice was thoughtful, not dismissive. But I didn't become king beyond the wall by ignoring chances to tilt the board. His gaze sharpened. You think you can keep this wolf king alive? I think we can try, Jon said. If he walks into a hall full of Freys with no warning, he may never walk out. But if he goes armed with knowledge, wary, he might avoid the worst of what they plan. Or crush it. And you'd warn him out of the kindness of your heart? Rattleshirt rasped, bones clacking as he shifted. You're a crow. Crows feather their own nests before others. Jon took a breath. This was the moment to lay it bare, or let it rot inside him. He's my brother, he said. I won't pretend otherwise. I want him to live. But it's not only that. If he lives, the North is stronger. If the North is stronger, there's a better chance of standing with us when the dead come. You asked me to be honest when I came to you, Mance. This is me being honest. The tent held its breath. Mance studied him for a long time, eyes steady and unreadable. At last he looked to Tormund. And you're willing to take this on? To slip away with a band and go whisper in a Kneeler king's ear? Tormund grinned. Sounds like a good story. One I'd like to live long enough to tell my grandchildren. I'll go. Take some of my folk. A giant or two. If it goes to shit, you can curse my name and say you never knew me. Mance's lips twitched, almost a smile. I've been cursing your name since before you learned to piss standing up. One more time won't hurt me. He glanced at the maps, at the little carved towers and trees. I won't send half my strength south on a gamble, but a few hundred that I can spare. If you fail and die, it weakens me. If you succeed... He shifted one of the wooden wolves on the board, sliding it closer to a carved lion. If you succeed, maybe the young wolf keeps the lions busy a while longer. Maybe he even remembers who warned him. You'll let us go? Jon asked. I'll let you go, Mance said. With this understanding, you go as my eyes, my ears, as much as his brothers. You see what strength the North truly has left, and you bring that knowledge back. If the Starks are breaking, I need to know it. If the Freys are snakes, I need to know how they coil. Jon inclined his head. I will. Then go, Mance said. Before I decide I'm a bigger coward than this Walder Frey sounds, and keep you where I can see you. They left at dawn 2 days later. Mance had not made a speech nor called a feast. That was not his way. Instead, he had come to Tormund's fire the night before, shared a horn of mead, and spoken quietly, his words practical and unadorned. How many men Tormund could spare, where they would try the wall, what signals they would send if they found scouts too thick on one side or another. There had been no talk of honor or destiny, only of survival. Jon found that steadiness oddly comforting. Men who wrapped their choices in ribbons of prophecy frightened him more. Tormund had picked his band with surprising care. The gray-braided woman, Era, Jon learned her name would ride as his second, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued. The then, whose name Jon still did not know, had come grimly, his bronze collar catching the light whenever he turned his head. A dozen archers, a score of spears, a handful of raiders who knew how to move quietly when they had to. And looming over them all, a giant named One, whose true name none of them could manage. You look like a crow on a stolen horse, Tormund told Jon as they saddled up. Which, to be fair, is what you are. But try to sit like you belong in that saddle, at least. Ygritte swung up onto her own mount with the easy grace of someone born to it. He belongs wherever I say he does, she said. Right now, that's here. Don't you go trying to steal him back for your daughters, Tormund. The big man laughed. You think any daughter of mine would have a crow? She'd cut off his bits and wear them as a necklace. He clapped Jon on the back. Come on, boy. Time to go stop a feast. The camp watched them leave. Some faces were openly doubtful, others curious. A few quietly hopeful in ways they might not have admitted. Mance stood by his tent, arms folded, the wind tugging at his black wool. He did not raise a hand, But when Jon looked back, their eyes met, and an understanding passed between them. A line drawn, a risk taken. The snow squeaked under hooves as they rode out, the sound crisp in the brittle air. Ghost loped easily at Jon's stirrup, white fur almost glowing against the trampled gray. The wall loomed ahead, not as a straight line but as a jagged, irregular cliff, its ice face catching the weak sunlight and throwing it back in cold blues and whites. Jon knew every tower, every gate, every crack. Today it felt less like a home and more like a test. They skirted wide of Castle Black, staying in the broken ground where old drifts piled against wind-carved ridges. Jon led them toward the half-forgotten gate he had spoken of, a place where the wall had sagged and flowed over itself, leaving strange bulges and hollows. It had once been a postern gate, the Black Brothers told in stories, sealed centuries ago when raids were fiercer. Time and ice had gnawed at it since. As they rode, the rhythm of hooves and breath and jingling gear settled into something almost hypnotic. Jon's mind moved ahead of them, down along the Kingsroad, across the miles, to the Twins. He imagined the towers rising from mist, the bridge like a stone spine over dark water. He saw Robb riding up under their shadow, banners snapping, trusting in guest right and the forms of civility that men like Walder Frey despised even as they used them. Not this time, he told himself. Not if we're fast enough. He did not know how they would be received. Whether Robb would believe a brother who rode with wildlings, whether the Northern Lords would. Whether they would see him as traitor or savior, or something in between. He only knew that doing nothing would mean living with the weight of the dream like an iron collar. They reached the foot of the wall as the sun, such as it was, began its slow slide down the sky. Here, up close, the ice face towered over them like a frozen sea caught mid-wave, full of strange ripples and crevices. Jon dismounted, boots crunching in the wind-hardened snow, and walked to the place he remembered. A bulge where the old stones beneath the ice had shifted, leaving a jagged line like a half-healed wound. Here, he said. Tormund came to stand beside him, hands on his hips. Looks like a wall to me, he said. It is, Jon said. He crouched, gloved fingers tracing the uneven surface. But there are cracks, channels where meltwater has run and refrozen. We can use them, with ropes, careful steps. It won't be easy, but it's better than trying for a guarded gate. One rumbled something in his own tongue. Tormund barked a laugh. He says walls are for little folk, he translated. Giants walk over mountains. But for your sake, Crow, he'll try not to knock any ice down on your head. Tell him I'm grateful, Jon said. They set to work. As ropes were uncoiled and spikes hammered into what ice would take them, Jon looked up once more. Somewhere beyond that great white barrier, the Night's Watch went about its business. The brothers might be at their drill yard now, swords in hand, breath steaming in the cold. Maester Aemon would be in his tower, listening to the ravens. Sam, Jon's throat tightened. Sam would be in the library if he could, or in the yard if he must, puffing and red-faced but trying anyway. I'll come back, Jon promised silently, if I can, if there's still a wall to come back to. For now, there was only the climb, and the long road beyond, and a hall full of wolves and Freys and sharpened knives waiting somewhere ahead in the dark. He set his hands to the ice and began to climb. The ice was not smooth. It was treacherous, ridged and pocked and ridged again, as if a sea had been frozen mid-storm and then shaved down by centuries of cruel winds. Jon's fingers ached inside his stiff gloves, even with the leather strips wrapped round them. Each time he drove an iron spike into a seam, the shock of it ran up his arm to his shoulder and rattled his teeth. Left hand higher, Crow, Tormund bellowed from below. Unless you mean to come tumbling down and flatten us all. Jon clenched his jaw and found another hold, fingers probing until they discovered a narrow groove where meltwater had once run. He could feel the faintest seep beneath the surface, a ghost of wetness in all that frozen mass. The rope about his waist tugged with his movements, tied off below to a cluster of men and to one who had planted both enormous feet and leaned back, bracing the line with his whole weight. The ice here, on the haunted side of the old postern, was more gray than white. Bits of ancient stone peered through in places, black teeth in a blue mouth. Jon remembered standing atop the wall with Samwell Tarly, peering down at this same stretch of wilderness. The land north of the barrier spread beneath them like a rumpled cloak. Felt different from this angle. From here, the wall was not a thing of awe and stories. It was an obstacle, a problem to be solved with cold hands and colder nerves. He risked a glance down. The world fell away beneath him, a dizzying tumble of rock and snow and small dark figures. Tormund was a squat blaze of color against the white. Ygritte stood near his shoulder, head tipped back, her hair a spill of ember brightness under her hood. Ghost paced below, leaving pale tracks, eyes following Jon as if to will him upward. "Eyes on the ice, Jon Snow," Ygritte called. "If you fall, I'll not scramble up there to catch you." He snorted, breath frosting the air. "You couldn't catch me if you tried," he shot back, though his voice came thin. He didn't look again. He climbed. The old gate, if it could still be called that, had been swallowed by time. Once, long ago, black brothers had come and gone through here, leading ranging parties into the haunted forest. Now the stone arch that had framed their passage was buried. Only the vaguest outline remained, a suggestion of shape beneath layers of ice. But within that outline, the ice had cracked and cracked again. Water ran differently over old stone. It found paths. It made them. Jon reached a narrow ledge and hauled himself onto it, chest heaving. His legs shook with the effort of clinging to the wall. He pressed his cheek to the ice for a moment, feeling the deep, ancient chill seep into his skin. Somewhere in that frozen mass, he knew, were the ghosts of 1,000 winters. Men had died under this wall. Men had died on top of it. He had come close himself, the night the Wight tried to burn his commander alive. No time for that. He forced his mind back to now. Above him, the ledge dipped into a shadowed hollow, a place where the ice had sagged and then bent back over itself. The crack there was wide enough for a man to wriggle through, if he were thin and desperate and willing to risk being pinched in two if the wall decided to settle a little more. Jon was all three. He tested the edge with his axe, chipping away some of the more brittle ice, sending shards tinkling down past his boots. Then he slung the tool back on his belt, sucked in a breath and pushed forward. The world became blue-white and blind. Ice pressed in on all sides, scraping his shoulders, his ribs. His cloak snagged, tore. The rope around his waist grated against the frozen walls of the channel. For a moment, panic flared. An animal suffocating need to go back, to get out, to not be caught, trapped, crushed. He gritted his teeth and kept wriggling. His fingers found a gap and pulled. His boots found purchase on some invisible ridge and shoved. The ice groaned around him, an ominous, muffled thunder that rang in his bones. Then suddenly he was through, tumbling onto a slope of packed snow and sliding a few feet before catching himself. The air was different here. Colder, if that were possible, but also somehow clearer. He was on the walkway. He lay there for a breath, staring up at the sky. On this side, the light came from the south. It painted the surface of the wall in paler shades, reflecting off the ice in a way that made Jon's eyes water. The wind knifed across the top, fierce and unbroken. He had missed it. Gods help him, but he had. He rolled onto his belly and crawled to the edge, peering down through the gap he had just squeezed through. "Your turn," he called. Tormund's answering laughter echoed up. "You hear that, Era? Crow thinks he's a mountain goat. All right then. If a kneeler can do it, I can." There was a scramble, a curse, a clatter of iron on ice. One by one they came. Tormund first, cursing and chuckling in equal measure, getting stuck halfway and needing Jon to wrap both hands in the rope and pull until his shoulders burned. Era next, her face set in unyielding lines, eyes narrowed against the press of ice. The then made no sound at all, his bald head slick with sweat despite the cold when he emerged. A half-dozen more followed, lean and wiry, hands bleeding inside their gloves. One did not come through the crack. There was no chance of that. For him, they had found another way. A narrow chute in the ice that ran from top to bottom, just wide enough for a giant to wedge himself into sideways. Even so, the sight of him forcing his massive bulk into that glassy throat made Jon's own chest constrict. The ice screamed as the giant moved, flakes and shards raining down like a broken storm. When at last one's great shaggy head emerged onto the walkway, he blew out a breath that gusted snow into Jon's face and rumpled his hair like a gale. "Never ask me to do that again," Tormund panted, slumping. "On the ice. Next time we walk through the bloody gate, even if we have to knock it down." "There may not be a next time," Era said. Her eyes flicked to Jon. "If this goes wrong." He nodded, accepting the weight of that. "Then we make this time count." Below, on the northern side, the rest of Tormund's chosen band were already moving, leading spare horses along a path that would bring them to the other side of the wall where the climb was easier, where the ice broke into steps. They'd meet again beyond the barrier, if all went well. Jon stood, feeling the wind claw at his cloak, and turned to face the south. The wild, broken land of the haunted forest lay behind him now. Before him, beyond this frozen cliff, the world fell away into the soft, rolling shapes of the Gift, and further still to the Riverlands and the Twins. Home and not home, danger and hope. "Come," he said, "we've a long road yet." Crossing the wall was less like stepping over a border and more like slipping between worlds. The descent on the southern side was easier, though that was a relative thing. The old ice stair that twisted down from the walkway here had fallen into disrepair. Chunks of it had sloughed away, leaving gaps like missing teeth. They picked their way down single file, clinging to ropes, boots scraping for purchase. Twice, a step crumbled under Tormund's weight, sending him sliding a few feet before Jon, and the then hauled him up short. "7 hells," Tormund wheezed. "How do your crow brothers do this every day and still find breath to whine about it?" "They use the lifts at Castle Black," Jon said, teeth chattering. "Mostly. Lazy bastards," Tormund muttered. Ygritte went down as if she'd been born on ice stairs, light and sure. Her laugh torn away by the wind each time she glanced back up at him, cheeks flushed pink. One half climbed, half slid, sending cascades of snow and ice down ahead of him. More than once, Jon had to flatten himself against the inner wall to let the hail pass, breath catching at the knowledge that a misstep would send any of them tumbling to be broken below. At last, they reached the base. The land here was familiar in a way that hurt. Scrubby trees bent under the weight of snow. Low stone walls crisscrossed the fields, marking long abandoned plots. The burned-out shell of an old watch hut slumped under a drift, roof half-caved. Jon's boots crunched on ground he had patrolled as a brother of the Night's Watch, looking north with a wary eye. Now he turned his gaze south. "No black cloaks," Era observed, scanning the horizon. "You sure they don't come this way?" "Not often," Jon said. "Most of their focus is on the main gates. Castle Black, Eastwatch, Shadow Tower. They've enough to worry about with Mance and the others without sending men to freeze guarding ruins." "Good," Tormund said. "Means fewer eyes to see us." He swung into his saddle with a grunt. "We ride hard the first day to put the wall at our backs. I don't want some crow on a morning patrol stumbling over our tracks and running squawking to his friends." Jon mounted as well, feeling the horse shift under him. The animal, a tough little Garen, coat shaggy with winter fur, flicked its ears back and forth, bristling with unease at the scent of one and Ghost both. Jon soothed it with a touch and a word. The horse's warmth seeped into his chilled legs. When they set off, the group moved in a long, straggling line, one bringing up the rear like a walking hill. The snow underhoof here was not as deep as that north of the wall. The land was broken by stones and thorny bushes, and in places, the dark earth showed through, hardened into rutted ridges. The sky, though, was much the same. Low, sullen, the sun a pale smear. As they rode, Jon's mind flicked back, unbidden, to the faces he had left behind. Lord Commander Mormont, grim and tired, his hand heavy on Jon's shoulder as he said, The Night's Watch is the shield that guards the realms of men. Remember that, boy." Samwell, eyes wide behind the mist of his breath, clinging to books as though they were shields. Castle Black's dim hall, the smell of stew and smoke, the feel of rough benches beneath him. Brotherly voices, rising in song to the words of an oath that still beat in Jon's blood. "I am the sword in the darkness." He wondered if the brothers would ever know what he did now, if they would understand, if they would forgive him. The day wore on. The wall dwindled behind them, not in height. The thing was too vast to ever truly look small, but in presence. Its weight on Jon's shoulders eased, replaced by a different pressure, the sense of a ticking clock. At midday, they paused long enough for the horses to nose at feed bags, for one to crunch through a half-frozen stream and drink deep. A few tough stalks of withered grass poked through the snow here. Era knelt and tugged one from the ground, rolling it between her fingers as if tasting this new land through her skin. "This all south?" she asked. "This is only the gift," Jon said. "Land given to the Watch thousands of years ago. It never flourished the way the south does. Too close to the cold. Too many raids. But further down," he nodded. "Further down, you'll see fields green with barley and wheat, orchards heavy with fruit, rivers that don't freeze." Tormund's eyes gleamed. "Hear that, giant? Apples the size of your head." One grunted, unimpressed. They mounted again and rode on, until the wall was a pale line on the horizon and the land began, at last, to soften. They found the village as dusk crept in, pink-gray and thin. It was not much, only a huddle of stone houses crouched around a dry well, their roofs fallen, doors leaning drunkenly from broken hinges. Someone had lived here once. Families, by the look of it. Children had run in these lanes. Cows had lowed in these byres. Now only the wind moved through them, whistling low. "Abandoned," Jon said as he swung down from his horse. His voice sounded loud in the emptiness. "How can you tell?" Tormund asked. "Perhaps they're all inside, hiding from your ugly face." "There's no smoke," Jon said. "No fresh tracks. Look." He towed at a drift. The snow there was undisturbed, a smooth, unbroken skin. The doors hang open, and there, he gestured to a corner where a small carved wooden figure lay half-buried. If there were still folk here, they'd not leave their gods lying in the snow. Tormund grunted. "Good enough," he said. "Their loss is our stew." He cupped his hands around his mouth and called to the others. "We'll camp here, get fires going in these stone holes, before my arse freezes to my saddle." They moved in a practiced flurry. Era set scouts on the outskirts, posted where they could watch the approaches and the faint trail they had ridden in by. Ygritte took 2 archers and went to see if any half-wild goats or hardy rabbits still haunted the nearby scrub. One settled himself in what had once been the village square, back against the well, like some vast, shaggy idol. Jon claimed a corner of a half-roofed house, its walls mostly intact. He fed a fire with broken chair legs and splintered beams until the flames licked high, filling the space with a wavering warmth that smelled of old smoke and rot. Ghost patted the perimeter, nose low, occasionally pausing to sniff at some ancient smell embedded in the stone. As the others drifted in, drawn by the promise of heat, Jon found himself staring at the marks on the walls. Here, someone had scratched a tally, perhaps of days, perhaps of bushels stored. There, a child's clumsy drawing, a stick figure, a lopsided sun. On a rough shelf, long since toppled, a cracked clay cup lay on its side, a smear of something dark still clinging to its inside. Wine, maybe, or jam. "What are you brooding at now?" Ygritte asked as she ducked through the crooked doorway. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold. A brace of scrawny hairs hung from her hand. "Thinking of how you'd rebuild it all, you noble crow? Make it neat with rules and lords and all." "I was thinking of who left," Jon said. "And why?" "War," she said simply, dropping the hairs near the fire. "Or fear. Or both. That's what your traitor said, wasn't it? That the South's full of men with swords and no good sense." "Yes," Jon admitted. But this is far north for Lannister raiders. He frowned. It could be that the men left to fight for one lord or another, and their families went south with them. Or, he hesitated. Or, she pressed. Or they fled something else. He looked at Ghost, who was now staring fixedly at the darkest corner of the room, ears pricked. The dead don't respect borders. Ygritte's mouth thinned. You always know the jest to bring to a fire, she said. Here, skin these before Tormund eats them fur and all. He did as she asked, letting the simple work of knife and pelt and sinew quiet his thoughts. The hairs were thin, but there was enough meat on them to make a decent stew once mixed with the grain and dried roots the wildlings carried. As the smell of cooking rose, more of Tormund's band gathered, stamping snow from their boots, shaking ice from their hair. Someone began a low song, a wordless thing that wound around the flicker of the flames like smoke. Outside, the sky deepened to ink. Stars came pricking through, sharp and cold. Ghost's growl cut across the hum of voices. It was low at first, a warning rumble. Jon froze, knife halfway through a strip of meat, every part of him tuned to that sound. Ghost stood now, every hair along his spine bristling, head turned toward the open doorway. His lips peeled back, just enough to show teeth. What is it? Era asked. Her hand went to the knife at her belt as easily as another woman's might go to her apron. Something's out there, Jon said quietly. He rose, wiping his hands on his cloak, and reached for Longclaw. The sword's familiar weight settled in his palm, a comfort and a reminder both. Tormund appeared at the door, horn in hand. We've men on watch, he said. If there were something. Ghost's growl spiked into a snarl. Then the smell hit them, not the sour stink of unwashed bodies or the sharp tang of horse. Something else. Sweet and rotten and cold all at once, like meat left too long in snowmelt. Jon's heart thudded. He moved to the doorway, Longclaw drawn. The night pressed close, swallowing the weak light that spilled from their fire. He could see shapes, the hulks of other houses, the dark bulk of one by the well, the faint glimmers of other campfires through cracks. Between them, shadows shifted. A figure lurched into the spill of light. At first glance, it looked like a man. A farmer, perhaps, from the cut of the clothes. His tunic hung in tatters, one sleeve gone, the flesh beneath pale and pocked with freeze burn. His eyes were wrong. They stared not with fear or rage, but with a flat, dead emptiness. His movements were jerky, as if pulled by strings. There was a scrabble behind him. Another figure, then another. Wights, Jon said. The first of the dead things moved faster than Jon remembered. Perhaps it was the slope, perhaps the pull of some unseen will. Whatever the cause, it came on in a grotesque half-run, feet slipping in the snow, arms outstretched. Back, Jon barked. Fire. Use fire. He met the Wight halfway, Longclaw singing through the air. The blade bit into its chest with a wet crunch. For a heartbeat, Jon thought that would be enough. In any normal fight, it would have been, but the thing barely slowed. Its fingers clawed at his cloak, cold biting through the wool. He jerked the sword free and took its head. That worked. The body staggered, then collapsed, twitching. The head landed in the snow, mouth still opening and closing soundlessly, like a fish yanked from dark water. Cut them apart, Jon shouted. Take off heads and hands, and burn them if you can. Tormund roared something wordless, swinging his axe. The broad blade sheared through another Wight's arm. The limb flopped to the ground and began to drag itself forward, fingers digging into the slush. A wildling woman screamed and kicked it away, then drove a spear through the thing's chest. It didn't stop crawling. Fire, Jon repeated, throat raw. Era had already snatched a brand from the hearth, its end trailing sparks. She hurled it at the nearest Wight, hitting it full in the face. Dry skin blackened, peeling back from yellow teeth. The thing flailed, keening in a sound that made the hair on Jon's arms rise. The smell of burning rot rolled over them. More were coming. Half a dozen now, staggering from the darkness. They bore the remnants of small folk lives: homespun shirts, patched trousers, a shawl still tied around one woman's shoulders. One had a child's toy clutched in fingers that had gone black to the bone. Jon's stomach lurched. Whoever had lived in this village had not fled after all. They'd never had the chance. Ghost darted forward, a pale blur. He slammed into one Wight, teeth closing on its throat. Even dead, the thing fought. Its hands scrabbled at his fur, fingers seeking purchase. Ghost shook his head savagely, tearing it free. Vertebrae snapped. The Wight sagged. One moved like a storm. With each step he took, snow sprayed. He seized one Wight by the torso and ripped it clean in half, flinging the pieces aside. Where they landed, they still twitched, but they were less dangerous, their reach shortened. "Get them by the fire," Jon yelled. "Drag them in." Working in a frantic, brutal rhythm, they did. Longclaw rose and fell, severing limbs that refused to heed the natural order. Axes chopped, spears pinned. Era and another wildling woman snatched brands, thrusting them into eye sockets under rib cages, anywhere the flame might catch. The Wights burned badly at first, like wood too wet for the hearth. But once the fire took, it spread hungrily, licking up rags and hair and frozen flesh. The fight did not last long. It only felt that way. When at last the last twitching hand had been rendered to char, when the final keening hiss of decaying lungs had faded, the night closed in again with shocking quiet. The smell was worse now. Tormund spat into the snow, wiping his axe on a scrap of cloth that smoldered at the edges. "There," he said, breathing hard. "You see? That's what we came south to flee. And we find it waiting for us here, too." "They must have been turned not long ago," Jon said, voice hoarse. His arms ached from swinging Longclaw. "If they'd been roaming long, the brothers would have seen signs. Or the Wights would have moved further south." "How do you know they haven't?" Era asked. Her face was pale beneath the dirt and cold. He didn't. The thought made his blood go colder than the wind ever had. If a handful of Wights had reached this village, there was no reason more could not be shambling through the woods, through the empty fields, drawn by heat and life wherever they found it. "We keep better watch," he said. "We move faster." "Faster," Tormund echoed. His usual laughter was gone, stripped away by the sight of the dead villagers. "Aye, we ride like winter itself is snapping at our heels, because it bloody well is." They did not sleep deeply that night. Men and women dozed in snatches, jolting awake at the smallest shift of shadow, hand going to knife or spear. Ghost paced the perimeter until dawn, paws leaving tracks that blurred together into a white ring around the ruined village. Jon slept lightly, dreaming not of halls and wolves this time, but of empty faces lurching through snow toward a pair of towers over black water. When morning came, the dead were nothing but charred heaps in the square, sending up thin threads of foul-smelling smoke. They left them there as warning and as proof and rode on. The Kingsroad, when they reached it, was a scar. In summer, Jon remembered. It had been a long, hard ribbon of packed dirt and gravel, flanked by hedges and low stone walls. Merchants had rattled along it in their wagons, banners snapping, voices loud. Farmers had driven carts piled high with turnips and cabbages. Once, a traveling mummers' troop had passed through Winterfell on their way south, their painted wagon creaking under costumes and masks. Now, the road was a churned mess of mud and old snow. Hoofprints overlapped in a confusion of directions. Some were fresh, others half-filled with meltwater. Wagon ruts had frozen into treacherous grooves. Patches of blood-speckled slush marked where skirmishes had taken place and been covered over by new falls. They turned south onto it, drawing their cloaks tight against the wind. One walked off to the side, where the ground was firmer, his great feet leaving craters. The land here bore the marks of war more plainly than the gift had. Fields lay fallow, furrows washed out, their seed never taken hold. Burned farmsteads punctuated the landscape. Here, a cottage with its roof gone and its walls blackened. There, a stable collapsed in on charred beams. In one place, A small god's wood had been hacked down, stumps sprouting like rotten teeth. At midday, they passed a holdfast perched on a low hill near the road. Its wooden palisade had been burned, the timbers charred and collapsed inward. The gate hung twisted. Inside, the remnants of a round tower sagged, its stones scorched and blackened where some siege engine's fire had kissed them. From the ruined gatehouse, 3 bodies swung. They were little more than shapes against the gray sky, wrapped in what remained of their cloaks. The ropes creaked as the wind tugged them. Crows clustered on the shoulders and heads, feathers sleek and black, beaks busy. Ygritte reined in, eyeing them, her mouth tight. "You kneelers do love your decorations," she said. "Is this how you show you're better than us? Hang your own folk for all to see." "Those aren't small folk," Jon said quietly. "Look at the boots, the swords at their sides. The blades, though rusting now, were good steel. The boots were fine, reinforced at the toes, made for long riding. The men hanging there had been soldiers. One had a tattered strip of crimson still clinging to his shoulder. A Lannister color, smeared with soot. Could be bandits, Tormund said. Could be lords. Hard to tell a man's worth once he's swinging. Could be both, Jon said. The war in the Riverlands had never been a simple story of one side good, the other monstrous. Fathers had split from sons, brothers from brothers, all for banners and oaths and chances at plunder. Whatever they were, they're dead now, and left for the crows, same as anyone without a keep big enough to hide in, Era said. Her gaze flicked to Jon. Your brother's war makes a mess of things. He didn't start it, Jon said. He's still in it, she replied. And so are we now. Further along the road, they saw signs of living folk. A cluster of refugees huddled in a roadside ditch, wrapped in threadbare cloaks, eyes hollow. A wagon drawn by a bone-thin horse, piled with everything a family had been able to salvage. A few sticks of furniture, a trunk, a cradle roped on top. The man walking beside it had a sword at his hip, though the way he carried himself said he'd never been trained to use it. The woman on the driver's seat clutched a baby beneath her cloak. Jon wanted to stop, to ask where they'd come from, where they were going, to see if they needed food, but he didn't dare. They'll remember the faces of anyone who looks different, Era said under her breath, as if reading his thoughts. If someone comes asking later, better to be smoke on the wind to them. He knew she was right, yet as they passed the refugees, he felt their eyes on him like weights. One child, no more than 5, stared openly. Her cheeks were chapped and cracked. Her gaze went from Jon to one and back again, uncomprehending. Ghost bared his teeth slightly. The child flinched, pulling back into her mother's arms. War gnawed at the weak. It always had. By the time the sun dipped, they had covered many hard miles. At a crossroads where a weathered stone marker pointed one way toward Winterfell and another toward the Trident, they halted in the lee of a low hill. Tormund built no large fire that night, only a few small, banked ones, their light carefully hooded. The Kingsroad was too close, and the risk of scouts or outriders too great. Around those muted flames, Jon listened to the talk of the south that filtered through. New rumors from a peddler they'd seen at a distance, a snatch of song drifting on the wind, the half-coherent mutterings of a deserter they'd trussed up and questioned before sending him stumbling away. All threads wove into the same tapestry. Robb Stark had crossed the Trident and moved west, striking at Lannister lands. He had won battles, lost friends, lost bannermen. The Karstarks had gone, taking their men with them. Winterfell had been burned, its lord's younger sons dead or missing. And now the young wolf rode back east, toward the Freys, with a bride that was not Frey on his arm and a need to mend a broken pact. He's days away from the twins, if the tales are true, Tormund said, scratching at his beard. We'll need to ride harder still. Jon stared into the half-covered flames, seeing not the embers but the glow of torches reflected on pale stone, on the steel tips of hidden bolts. We'll reach him, he said. We have to. On the 4th morning after they had crossed the wall, the land began to change in earnest. The snow thinned as they rode, giving way to patches of brown earth and dead grass, then to stretches where green dared to show its face. The air lost some of its biting edge, though it still carried a damp chill that wormed under cloaks and into bones. Trees grew more frequent, clustering along the road in thin copses, bare-branched oaks and beeches and elms, their last leaves rattling like old bones. At a bend where the Kingsroad dipped toward a shallow ford, Tormund called a halt. The horses blew clouds of breath, tossing their heads. "We're getting close to places where Kneeler lords like to put their boots," he said. "Castles, towers, old piles of stone. We can't ride like a flock of geese anymore, honking the whole way. Time to split our feathers." He jabbed a thick finger at the rough map Jon had drawn in the damp earth. A line for the Kingsroad, a fork where it met the river road leading to the Twins, dots for likely camps and crossroads inns. Jon had marked where he thought Robb might be now, based on Derrik Holt's tales and what he remembered of the young wolf's last known position. "You take your best riders and go ahead," Jon said. "A small group is less likely to be seen as a threat, or at least less likely to be shot at before you can shout." "And you?" Tormund asked. "I'll go with you," Jon said, surprising himself with the certainty of it. "If I ride into my brother's camp with only wildlings at my back, they'll arrow me where I sit. If I come ahead as a scout, they might listen long enough not to kill us all." "That assumes they recognize you," Era said dryly. "You've more hair and scars than when you left, I wager." "I'm still his brother," Jon said. "Catelyn Stark will know my face. So will others." There were men in Robb's host who had grown up in Winterfell's shadow as Jon had, servants, squires, guards. Men who had seen him drill with wooden swords in the yard, who had watched him stand back at feasts, not quite inside but not entirely outside either. They would not forget. Tormund considered. "All right," he said. "You, me, the girl, and a handful of others ride light and fast. Era, you take the rest. Keep to the trees when you can. If we're not back in 3 days, you turn your arse around and ride north as if the wall itself were on fire. No sense getting all of us killed because our crow got himself skewered on some lord's spear." Era's gaze flicked to Jon, sharp as a knife's edge. "If you're dead," she said, "you'll have done what you can. I won't waste my people trying to drag corpses out from under stone towers." "Fair," Jon said. He could not ask more. They chose 5 riders to go with them. The then, silent and steady. A young woman named Dalla with eyes like chips of flint. An older man with a scar from ear to jaw who answered only to rag. And 2 bowmen who knew how to read a field for cover. One would remain with Era. A giant in Robb's camp would cause too much panic at first sight. Better to introduce him later, if at all. "Besides," Tormund grumbled, "the big bugger's too slow in the trees. He'll knock his head on every branch and blame me." They redistributed supplies, taking only what the advance party needed. Dried meat, hard bread, skins of water and sour ale, a few bandages and herbs for wounds. Jon checked Longclaw's edge, running his thumb lightly along it until it tingled. Ghost watched with unblinking red eyes. When they set off again, the world felt sharper. The Kingsroad funneled them south, but there were choices to be made at every turning. They avoided obvious campsites, those wide-open clearings where larger companies liked to set their tents. They took side tracks when they could, little more than deer paths through brush, cutting across bends to rejoin the road further on. Twice, they spotted Outriders in the distance. Mounted men with spears and mail and no sigils visible from afar. Each time, they melted into the trees, waiting with held breath until the riders passed and their hoofbeats faded. By late afternoon, the sky had clouded over, pressing low and heavy. A thin rain began, more mist than drops, beating on cloaks and eyelashes. It made the road slick, the horses' hooves throwing up clods of mud. They were climbing a low rise when Ghost's hackles shot up. The direwolf's head snapped to the left, toward the stand of trees that lined the road. His lips peeled back. Jon felt the warning like an electric jolt. "Riders," he said, reining in. He heard them a heartbeat later. The muffled thud of hooves on damp earth, the faint jingle of harness. Then they were there, bursting from the trees in a ragged line. Half a dozen men on horseback, cloaks soaked, spears in hand. Every shield had a sigil painted on it, gray on white, a direwolf. The Stark Outriders brought their horses up hard, mud spraying from iron-shod hooves. One man's mount nearly skidded into another, but they righted, forming a rough half-circle around Jon's group. "Hold!" their leader shouted. He was broad-shouldered, with a beard gone more white than brown, and an old scar across the bridge of his nose. Water dripped from the edge of his helm, his spear point leveled at Jon's chest. "Speak your names, or die with them unsaid." Tormund's hand twitched toward his axe. Jon shot him a sharp look, a silent plea for patience. "Lower your spear," Jon said to the leader. "I'm not your enemy." The man snorted. "I see wildling furs and wildling faces and a bloody great wolf. And you tell me you're not my enemy? You'll forgive me if my spear doesn't agree." "I'm Jon Snow," Jon said. He let the name fall plain. "Bastard son of Eddard Stark of Winterfell." The rain seemed to pause. Up close, he could see the man's eyes, narrowed under the rim of his helm. They were a faded blue, with lines at the corners that spoke of much squinting into northern winds. "Jon Snow is at the wall," he said at last. "Took the black, rides with crows. I've seen him myself. Years ago." "I did," Jon agreed. "And I still do. But I'm here now as well." He lifted Longclaw's hilt, just enough to show the pommel. The direwolf's head there, carved in pale stone, caught what little light there was. "You know this sword?" The man's gaze flicked to it, then back to Jon's face. He swallowed. "I do. Lord Commander Mormont gave it to me," Jon said. "In place of the Stark steel my father would have had made for me, if things had been different." He nudged his horse forward a step, ignoring the spear point. "Tell me your name." The man hesitated, then almost reluctantly said, "Carl of the Rills." His eyes searched Jon's face, seeing past the extra scar along his jaw, the windburn, the rougher beard, looking for the boy he'd glimpsed in Winterfell's yard. "I was guardsman under Lord Stark once. Stood the gate when you were a lad, running to the forge and back." Jon remembered a dozen men at Winterfell's gates, their faces blurring into one memory of chain mail and fur and patient boredom. But something in Carl's stance was familiar, the set of his shoulders, the way he held his spear. Memory tugged. "You had a dog," Jon said. "Old brown with one ear torn. You'd sneak him meat from the kitchens." Carl's mouth twitched. "I did," he said slowly. "Old Dren. Lived longer than some men I've known." His grip on the spear shifted. The point dipped a fraction. "If you're Jon Snow, you're far from where you swore your vows." "So are you," Jon said. "The wall has need of all the men it can get, and yet here you are, riding in the riverlands. Times change, needs change. I'm here because Robb Stark needs a warning." At the sound of his king's name, Carl straightened. "You know where his grace rides?" "Toward the twins," Jon said. "To make peace with Lord Walder Frey. I've reason to think that peace will cost him more than he can afford." Carl frowned. "We've orders not to speak of our king's movements to strangers." "I'm not a stranger," Jon said, "and I'm not asking you to give them away. I'm asking you to take me to him, so I can keep him alive long enough to win this war. For all of us." The Outriders shifted uneasily in their saddles. Tormund watched them with open amusement, as if he were at a mummer's play. "Your friends," Carl said, nodding toward the wildlings, "are less persuasive." "Friends," Tormund said grandly, hand over his heart. "Partners. Foes of all who don't like good ale, warm furs, and not being eaten by dead things. Tormund Giantsbane at your service. Tell your king I saved his brother from a climb and am here to save his arse from a feast." "Giantsbane?" one of the younger riders blurted. "They say you killed a giant by—" "Those stories are all lies," Tormund cut in. "I killed two, and bedded a she-giant for good measure. But we've no time now to tell it all." Carl stared between them, rain dripping from his nose. Finally, he exhaled, fogging the damp air. "If you're lying," he said to Jon, "Robb Stark will see it. And he'll hang you, bastard or no." "If I'm lying," Jon said, "I'll deserve it." Carl studied him another long moment, then raised his spear. "Very well," he said. "You and your company will ride ahead of us. Your wolf too. Any tricks, any sign you mean harm, and we'll cut you down and leave your bodies for the crows and whatever else walks these lands." "Understood. Understood," Jon said. They fell in together, an uneasy braid of cloaks and lances and wary glances. The direwolf sigil on the Outriders' shields seemed to weigh more heavily on the air now, as if each step south were being watched by gray eyes far away. As they rode, Carl moved his horse closer to Jon's. "Your brother thinks you dead, you know," he said gruffly. "He'll be surprised to see you. Don't know if it'll be joy or anger or both." "I expect both," Jon said. "He's a Stark. He's a king," Carl corrected. "But that too." The smell of the camp reached them first. Smoke and horse, boiled meat, damp canvas, men. It was a familiar scent, though larger, heavier than any Jon had known. A whole world of war compressed into a churned stretch of riverland meadow. As they crested a low rise, he saw it sprawled below them. Tents huddled in clusters, some plain, some striped or dyed with faded colors. Lines of horses stood picketed, heads down, tails flicking. A pair of smithies banged away at bent armor and broken blades, sparks flying even in the gray light. Cooks bent over cauldrons. Men in mail and leather moved between it all, some bearing spears, others hauling firewood or barrels. Banners rose above the chaos, snapping in the damp wind. The leaping trout of Tully, the roaring bear of Mormont, the giant of Umber, chains dangling, and, at the heart of it all, the gray direwolf of House Stark, snapping on a field of white. Home, Jon thought, and not. As Carl's party rode down into the camp, conversation stilled in their path. Men turned to look, eyes narrowing. Hands went to sword hilts. The sight of wildling furs was strange enough. The sight of Ghost patting at Jon's stirrup drew open stares. "7 hells," one man breathed. "Is that a dire wolf?" another said. "Like the king's, but white as a white." Carl lifted his hand, gesturing their passage clear. "On the king's business," he barked. "Keep your eyes in your heads and your blades in their sheaths unless you've orders otherwise." They passed beneath the shadow of a tall pavilion, its canvas striped gray and white. Outside it, 2 guards stood straight as spears, helms polished, cloaks clasped with little direwolves. One of them nearly dropped his spear when he saw Jon's face. "Gods be good," he whispered. "Snow." Jon recognized him then. Pate, one of the younger guards from Winterfell, though harder now, more lined. "Pate," he said, and something in his voice made the man blanch. "Lord Snow," Pate said, then seemed to remember himself. "I mean, Sir 7 hells. I'll fetch the queen, her ladyship, and the king." "You do that," Carl said, "and tell them he's brought half the wild north with him." They waited, horses shifting, under the weight of 100 eyes. Ghost sat, a white stone at Jon's boot, gaze sweeping the camp with feral calm. Tormund looked around as if appraising a marketplace. "Not bad," he said, "for folk who live in boxes." "They're tents," Jon said under his breath. "They're boxes made of cloth," Tormund insisted. "Still boxes." The tent flap parted. Catelyn Stark emerged first, cloaked in dark blue, her auburn hair streaked with more gray than Jon remembered. Lines had dug deeper into her face, the grooves beside her mouth carved by grief and worry both. For a heartbeat, she looked only at Carl, as if expecting some routine report. Then her gaze found Jon. She stopped dead. Her eyes widened, blue gone brittle. Her hand rose, fingers curling in the air between them, as if she might reach across the space and touch him, to test whether he were flesh or smoke. "Jon," she said. It was not warm, not cold either, disbelieving. "My lady," he said and slid from his saddle. He wanted to kneel. It was an old habit, well ingrained. But he remembered the black of his cloak, the feel of the wall beneath his boots, the vows he'd sworn. He settled for a bow instead, precise but not obsequious. "Mother?" another voice said from within the tent. "What is it?" Robb Stark stepped out. He had changed. Of course he had. Time did that, and war did the rest. He was broader now, shoulders filled out, the softness of boyhood carved away. A crown of bronze and iron circled his brow, the points shaped like little swords. A short beard, more russet than dark, roughened his jaw. But his eyes, those clear gray eyes, were the same. They landed on Jon and went wide with a shock so pure Jon felt it like a physical blow. "Jon," Robb said. "By the gods!" He took 2 steps, stopped, as if remembering he was a king and kings did not run. Then he abandoned that notion entirely and closed the distance in 3 long strides, arms going round Jon in a crushing embrace. For a moment, Jon was a boy again, grinning in the Winterfell yard as he and Robb tackled each other into the snow. For a moment, the smell of smoke and horse and steel fell away, replaced by hot bread from the kitchens, Maester Luwin's ink, the crisp, cold air of home. "Robb," Jon said into his brother's shoulder. His throat closed on the name. "Your Grace." "Don't call me that," Robb said roughly, pulling back enough to look at him. His eyes shone. We thought you dead. We heard nothing and the wall." He shook his head, as if trying to clear it. "What are you doing here? And with?" He looked past Jon, then to Tormund, to Ygritte, to the others. The king's face shuddered. The warmth cooled, not entirely, but enough. "With them," he finished. The king's tent was warmer than the camp outside, though not by much. A brazier in the center threw off heat, its coals glowing red. The air smelled of charcoal, parchment, wet wool. Maps covered the central table, held down by daggers and cups. Carved stones marked armies and castles, wolves and lions and towers, all frozen mid-play. Catelyn took her place near one corner, hands folded tightly. Brynden Tully, the blackfish, stood at Robb's right hand, deep lines graven in his face. The great Jon loomed near the entrance, his bulk taking up enough space for 3 men, his beard a wild thicket. Roose Bolton was there too, pale as old milk, his expression unreadable. Others clustered behind them, a half-circle of northern and riverland lords, their breath misting faintly. Jon and Tormund stood opposite. Ygritte, the then Dalla, and Rag waited near the entrance, under the watchful eyes of half a dozen armed guards. Ghost lay at Jon's boots, a white coil of muscle and bone and patient menace. Robb had shed his damp cloak, but the crown still sat on his brow. It looked heavier up close, the metal biting into skin. He rested both hands on the table, knuckles white. "Start at the beginning," he said to Jon, "and don't spare my feelings." So Jon did. He told them of taking the black, and of the ranging beyond the wall, of Craster's keep and dead things in the woods, of the fist of the first men, and the ravens circling above a ring of slaughtered brothers, of Mance Rayder's host, gathering like a storm, of going over to the Wildlings in truth and lie both, to learn their numbers, their plans. He told them of the Wights, and of the ruin in the gift. Ghost's ears flicked at that, as if he remembered the smell. Then he told them of Derrik Holt, the traitor, and the tales of the twins, of Walder Frey's simmering anger, of his own dream, the hall full of music and blood. He did not dress it up. He did not try to make it something it was not. He let the raw edges show. When he finished, the tent was very quiet. "So," Roose Bolton said at last, in his soft, flat voice, "you rode from beyond the wall on the strength of a traitor's gossip and a nightmare." "Yes," Jon said, "and on knowing what kind of man Walder Frey is, and what you did to him." Robb flinched slightly, jaw tightening. "I broke my word to Lord Walder," he said, before his mother could speak. His tone was clipped, controlled. "I promised to take one of his daughters to wife, and I did not. That was my doing. I can't blame my heart for it. Only my own weakness." Catelyn's eyes flicked to him, pained. The Freys swallowed the slight once already, the Blackfish said, grumbling all the while. But they bent. They let us cross their bridge for the first march south. They've milked more coin out of you in tolls than some lords see in a year. They're craven and grasping, but not famed for being bold. Craven men can be the most dangerous, Tormund put in cheerfully. They don't like their food being taken away. They'll poison your cup and call it justice. Be silent, one of the river lords snapped. No, Robb said, holding up a hand. Let him speak. We asked him to be here. Tormund's grin widened. There, you see? Your king's wiser than you, kneeler. That bodes well. Jon shot him a warning look, but the wildling only shrugged, unconcerned. I know I broke faith, Robb said, returning his attention to Jon. I meant to mend it. This marriage pact, this feast. I saw them as a way to heal the rift. To go on with more spears at my back, not fewer. Perhaps that's all it is, Catelyn said. Her voice was strained, but she forced calm into it. Walder Frey is a small man, for all his bridge. Small men hoard slights like misers hoard coin. But even he must know that breaking guest right would bring down half the realm on his head. Guest right means something in the north, Jon said quietly, and in the riverlands, perhaps less in the south, but still. It's a law older than any king. Men would be outraged, yes. They might march. But when? In a month? In a year? Word would be shaped by whichever men survive to tell it. By then, Robb could be dead. You could be dead. Your bannermen scattered. He looked around the tent, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. The Freys might lose, but what would that matter to you if you're buried? The great Jon growled low in his chest. I'd like to see a Frey try to stick a knife in me at supper, he said. I'd choke him with his own guts before I finished my ale. That's what they count on, Jon said. On pride, on outrage, on men who think no one would dare. On men who don't listen to the feeling in their gut that says something's wrong because it would mean admitting they'd been fools. Silence fell again. Robb's fingers drummed on the table, a steady, restless beat. Say you're right, he said. Say Lord Walder means to pay me back not only for broken vows but for every other insult he's swaddled over the years. Say he means to do it under his own roof. He drew a breath. What would you have me do? Refuse? Turn back? Spurn him again in front of all. If you turn back now without explanation, they'll call you coward and oathbreaker both, Bolton said. The Freys will howl, the Lannisters will laugh, and your own men will begin to doubt. And if you go unarmed into his hall, you may not walk out, Jon said. I'm not asking you to flee. I'm asking you to treat the feast as another battlefield, to go armed, to place men where they can stop crossbowmen if they appear, to have a signal ready. A song out of tune, a horn blown wrong, something that tells your people when to flip the tables instead of letting their throats be cut atop them. The Blackfish's mouth twitched. That, at least, is something I can work with, he murmured. I always did prefer my wineskins full and my walls guarded. Robb's gaze was on Jon, unblinking. You'd have me insult Lord Frey in his own hall by coming. Armored to his feast, he said, refusing his food, suspecting him of treason. I'd have you live, Jon said. Catelyn closed her eyes briefly, as if in prayer. Then she opened them and fixed her son with a stare that brooked no evasion. Listen to him, she said. Please, I have no love for Jon, you know that. But I've seen enough courts to know that men like Walder Frey do not forgive. Not truly. He'll smile and serve you meat and wine and words. And if he sees a way to hurt you more than your insult hurt him, he'll take it. Make it cost him little. He'd not dare. Once I'd have said that. Not anymore. She thought of another man, in another hall, Walder's liege lord, Hoster Tully, wasting away in his tower. The world had changed since his day. Reaver kings, boy kings, red kings, all took oaths and burned them like kindling. Then we go wary, Robb said at last. His voice had steadied. We treat the twins as we treat any battlement. We look for traps. We set some of our own. And if the Freys mean only to drink and dance and complain, then we'll have lost nothing but a few hours' sleep. He straightened, shoulders squaring. I'll not run from this. I can't. Too much rests on it. But I won't walk in blind either. He looked to Jon. Will you stand with me? In that hall, Jon thought of black cloaks and cold vows, of the wall looming behind him, of Mance's camp, dwindling now as it crept toward the same barrier from the opposite side, of wildlings huddled in caves, of dead men screaming as fire ate them in the ruined village, of Freys with knives in their sleeves. I will, he said, if I can keep my sword. And Ghost, your wolf stays with you, Robb said. If Walder Frey doesn't like it, he can choke on his own bile. I trust a direwolf more than I trust any Frey. He glanced at Tormund. And your friends. They spilled out of the tent into the falling dusk with more questions than answers, but at least with a shape to their plan. Tormund had taken the news of being invited into a kneeler's feast with predictable enthusiasm. I'll wear my best furs, he'd said, thumping his chest, and not eat anyone unless they try to eat me first. That's not as comforting as you think it is, the great Jon had replied, though a spark of rough amusement had lit his eyes. Robb had agreed to place men where Jon suggested, northern archers in the rafters if he could get them there, or at least in alcoves, with orders to watch other bowmen as much as any possible enemy outside. Trusted swords at the back of the hall, near the musicians, the servants. A few riverlords willing to play at being drunker than they were, their hands near knives rather than cups. A northern bard who knew the Rains of Castamere well enough to play it deliberately wrong if a signal was needed. It was not a perfect shield, but it was something. Now, as campfires sprang to life around them, throwing golden circles into the thickening dark, Jon and Robb stood alone near the king's tent. The noise of the camp, men laughing, arguing, singing low, swelled and receded like the sea. You've changed, Robb said, breaking the quiet. So have you, Jon replied. Robb huffed something that might have been a laugh and might have been a sigh. I suppose I have, he said. He looked older in this light, the fire catching in the hollows under his eyes, turning the crown into a jagged silhouette. Sometimes I feel like I went to bed a boy and woke up with a kingdom on my chest. I keep thinking I'll find a way to set it down for a while, and then there's another fire to put out. You were always stubborn, Jon said. You used to keep fighting in the yard until your knuckles bled, even when Ser Roderick told you to stop. You used to keep pace with me even when your lungs were ready to burst, Robb countered. You'd go white as milk, but you'd never fall behind. A corner of his mouth lifted. We were fools. We were children, Jon said. We didn't know the weight of steel then. He hesitated, then plowed on. Robb, there's more. Mance Rayder's host is real. It's vast. Tens of thousands. Families, not just raiders. He means to bring them south one way or another. If the wall falls, and it might, no matter what the Watch does, you'll have more to worry about than Lannisters and Freys. Robb's jaw tightened. My bannermen already think me mad for trusting so much to a bastard's dream, he said. If I tell them I plan to treat with wildlings as allies rather than enemies, they may decide I'm not fit to wear this crown at all. I'm not asking you to promise them lands tomorrow, Jon said. Only to think about it. To remember this. The real war isn't for a chair of swords in King's Landing. It's for the right of men to keep drawing breath when the dead come south. Wildlings, Northmen, Riverlords, even bloody Lannisters. It won't matter what we call ourselves if we all end up blue-eyed corpses. Robb stared at the ground for a moment, boots scuffing in the mud. Father used to say winter is the time for wolves to band together, he said. That the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. His gaze lifted, meeting Jon's. I don't know if I can make half the men in that tent see wildlings as part of their pack, but I'll remember what you've said. If we survive the twins, if we live to see another winter, I'll remember. That's all I can ask, Jon said, Ghost pressed against his leg, red eyes glinting. Robb glanced down at the direwolf, then off to where Grey Wind's shape moved near the edge of the camp. pacing under the watchful eye of his handlers. The two wolves watched each other across the distance, a white shadow and a gray, hackles raised not in anger, but in the wary acknowledgement of one predator to another. "This feast," Robb said, following Jon's gaze. Do you truly think it would have killed me if you'd not come?" "Yes," Jon said. There was no use softening it. "I do." Robb's throat worked. "Then whatever comes of this," he said, "remember that I'm glad you broke your vows long enough to ride south." "I broke them to keep them," Jon said. "To guard the realms of men. That's what the words say. They don't say I must never leave a block of ice." Robb barked a short, surprised laugh. "Maester Luwin would have your hide for twisting them so," he said. "Maester Luwin would say we must do what we can with the tools we have," Jon replied. "Right now, that means me standing in a fry hall with my hand on my sword and Tormund Giantsbane at my back. And a giant at the door if I decide to invite him," Robb said, shaking his head. "The songs these bards will make," he sobered. "We ride at first light. We'll be at the Twins by tomorrow night. After that, Jon said, we'll see whether the gods meant my dream as a warning to be heeded or a fate to be fought." Caitlin watched them from a little distance, half hidden by the tense shadow. Her heart twisted at the sight of Robb's profile, so like his father's now, and Jon's beside him, the bastard she had never quite found space in her heart for. Ghost's white shape, gray winds gray, two wolves with their human shadows. She had spent a life believing in promises and the forms of courtesy. The world had taught her how fragile those were. Now, as the last light bled from the sky, she found herself praying. Not to the seven she had known as a girl, but to any god who might be listening at the crossroads between dream and choice. Let this warning be enough, she thought. Let this be the night we stepped away from the butcher's block and not onto it. In the distance, the river murmured, unseen but present. Beyond it, days away yet, two towers rose over black water, already dreaming of a feast.